So welcome everybody to this breakout session where we have three speakers. Raphael Nagel, who is a businessman in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates, originally from Germany. We find out we come from the very same area. We have Dr. Majid Golpour, who is a researcher, sociologist, and EU consultant based in Paris and in Brussels. He has recently also become an advisor to EU Watch on our Middle East policy hub. And the third speaker is Nathanaël Chouraqui, who is a French-Israeli and who joins us from Jaffa in Israel. French. Just French, okay, and you're not Israeli, but you're joining us from Israel right now. He's a journalist, and he recently, or 2 years ago, you created the platform That's Why, and maybe we can talk a little bit about what that is later on. I'd like to start with Raphael Nagel and ask him a few questions. And please, if you have any questions to the interlocutors we have here on the panel, write them in the chat so we can put them to these people. So my first question, Raphael, would be to you. You were the co-founder of the Abrahamic Business Circle. What was your motivation and what are you trying to accomplish with this initiative?
Yes, I'm the co-founder of the Abrahamic Business Circle and the chairman. The Abrahamic Business Circle is a platform for high-profile individuals from around the globe. Our main idea was, thanks to the Abraham Accords, from there we did get the name. We did see, of course, as you know all, we had the visit of the Pope here in the UAE, where when they were planning to build the Abrahamic family house with a synagogue, a mosque, and a church on one side. I think this was the moment where we could see something is going a little bit on. And the Abrahamic Business Circle, we want to promote mainly economic diplomacy through business. We believe very much that in the moment that we have a business or common interests together, we are able to bridge many things, even if we have some opinions about each other or whatever. We are, thanks to business, we are able to bridge many things. And that's something what we learned here also in the UAE, or what I learned. We have around about 90% of our population are not locals, are guests like me. We only have 10% local population, and we have 205 nationalities, and we are all working together. So we, at the Abrahamic Business Circle, we are promoting globally business economy, promoting business, helping companies to find distribution partners, and so on.
Excellent. Now, when the Abraham Accords were signed, one international player was noticeably absent, and that was the European Union. It came a little bit as a surprise that suddenly there were two and then two more countries that signed peace agreements with Israel out of the blue almost. Why is that? Is Europe absent? Do you have an impression that Europe is being reluctant to be engaging in the Gulf region, in the Middle East as such? What is the reason why they are not figuring
First of all,
prominently?
I think I always have problems when I hear the word peace agreement. We never had a war with Israel and with Bahrain. So I always think it's a normalization agreement. And I know that for my friends in Israel, it's an extremely big thing. But to be really honest, for us in the UAE, it was big, of course, and it was very brave. And it showed very much the vision of the leaders also to open up here. And especially for a small country, just think about Saudi or even the UAE, with only 1 million local population, to do this big step is absolutely amazing. But I think it's something that is in the interest of both parties. On one side, we have Israel as the startup nations, and without any doubt, the UAE is the grow-up nation. So I think they work very well together. There are a lot of synergies what they're bringing in together. The UAE is a fantastic trade hub for everybody. On the other side, it's a business hub. And coming back to your question with Europe, no, I think Europe was not involved in this issue because I think geopolitics at this special time, America was very much focused on our region here. And I think it was they just had the right idea and they did bring it together. But Europe is everywhere present. We have a huge German community. We have an English community, French community. You can see European companies working all around the Middle East. So I think they don't have been not here directly involved, but I think the support was absolutely here, no question about it.
But do you think Trump was obviously a player who went there and banged on the table, whereas the Europeans have a more reluctant, shy, timid attitude to many things? Does that play a role, or is it irrelevant in that case? Was
I
it
think
more
we have
kind
to
of an
think that
interesting?
Trump did understand our region quite well. He has investments in Dubai even. He has hotels. He did come quite a lot to the region. Through to geopolitics, the UAE has always been a very interesting place for everybody. And I think for the UAE, probably we were just not there in the right moment. And there was no decision maker who did see probably the need. You also have to see something. As we both come from the same area in Germany, our autonomous community, our land in Baden-Württemberg, we have a GDP of around about 500 billion. And our GDP in the UAE is 400 billion, and Israel is around about the same. So I think it was very needed to boost up our economies also. And there's a lot of synergies. And there was happening trade since many, many years. Since more than 20 years, we have trade relations with Israel, even if they were not public and they were done down the table. But there was relationship always. And if we see it back in 1.5 years, we have a trade volume now of around about 1.5 billion per year. For small economies, I think it's a big step with a potential, I think, easily to go to 5 to 6 billion per year.
If we assume that these changes materialize in the business world, what would it mean for the political situation in the Middle East? Will that mean peace automatically, or a move towards a more peaceful coexistence? Or will it mean new conflicts that maybe we don't even know about yet?
To be really honest, I'm not a politician, so it's very difficult for me to have an opinion about politics. As the Abrahamic business circle, we are totally agnostic to politics and religion, mainly because, I give you an example, on the 29th of March, we are holding an event, and I'm the moderator of a panel where we have the ambassador to the UAE from Afghanistan, we have the ambassador of Moldavia, the ambassador of Philippines, the ambassador of Gambia. So we are really diversified. And to be really honest, do I think it will bring peace? I think any human relation, if we know each other, always brings peace and always brings prosperity. And we can see already, at the moment, we have around about 8 flights to Israel per day. They're not empty, otherwise they would not been running, yeah. We have a lot of Israelis who are coming, even if they are not Israeli Jews. I think and the funniest thing, we are able to do business here with everybody, independent of the country. So it makes no difference for us at all, because we are all guests at the end of the day, and we all have the same rights and obligations. And I think that's the amazing thing about the UAE, that they have provided us with a wonderful trading platform.
Mm. Do you see more potential also for more trade with Europe? Is it already at a high level that you say there is nothing?
It's very high level. And to see, the question will be how competitive is Europe, because our salaries here, of course, we have 90% of guests. So our salaries are very competitive because we have workers from all around the world. And the question is, I think Europe will always be present because of his technological innovation and all these things. But I'm sure that even in this momentous situation what we are living in Europe, I think Europe is very busy with itself. That's my personal feeling at the moment.
Can you see the Gulf countries as a bridge between Europe and Asia, for example, or could they be sidelined?
I think the amazing thing about the UAE, and it's not to do for them publicity or anything else, the amazing thing about the UAE is they are a bridge to everywhere. Because I can meet I just came back from an event here. That's the reason why I'm in the car, because I was delayed. And you meet people from all different nationalities. Nationality is not an issue. Here in the UAE, I think the main lesson what everybody will learn is the following. You deliver or you talk, and you will be only judged by this. Nobody will judge you by your religion or by your skin color or whatever. And I think that's a big thing what the world can learn from the UAE, because I'm not sure if Europe would handle it so easy. 90% of immigration in a country, it's huge. And we have to see that everybody is happy in general terms.
Do you see that Europe can learn something from the Gulf countries? When you mention a variety of people living there, or foreigners, integration maybe?
Tolerance, respect. I think that these are the main two things what we can learn. And also open-minded. People, as soon you have to see that Dubai in the since Corona, they've converted it mainly to the blockchain and cryptocurrency hub in a very short time. Artificial intelligence is a very big hype here in the country. So I think we can learn a lot from them, and we can see that we have to rethink our structures also.
Mm.
And the decision-making process, for example, till last year, December, till the 31st of December, our working week was from Sunday to Thursday. They decided to change it, and now it's like everywhere in the rest of the world, nearly like in Europe. I think the big advantage what we have here in the UAE, that they take decisions extremely quick. They are very flexible to adapt themselves to to a very volatile world. And that's now, something what we can learn.
One final question: how do you see the Russia-Ukraine war at the moment impacting on the world economy, and what do you see could the Gulf countries do to alleviate it, not in the political sense but in the economic sense? We discussed this morning, or we had a question about whether Saudi Arabia, for example, could increase oil production. Are there any other things that could come from the Gulf to solve this war in Europe, or to alleviate the negative effects of that war on Europe and the rest of the world?
I think, first of all, Saudi and the UAE have been neutral till the moment in what is extremely nice here. Even in any event, you find people from Ukraine and Russia sharing the same table. What does not seem to be the same situation at the moment, for example, in many German places, from what I can read from the newspapers. Here, people still are sharing, they keep on the conversation. I think it's a very clear political issue, but of course, the UAE, I'm very sure they will help to provide, to intermediate as much as they can. As you know, the UAE and the Middle East is no question also, Ukraine and Russia, both countries have a lot of relevance for food security of Africa. So I'm sure also many African countries will have a lot of interest to stabilize this issue as soon as possible. But of course, I think it's a political issue, and the political leaders, they have to decide the way out to the situation.
Okay, thank you very much for the moment. Let me bring in Dr. Majid Golpour, who is a Iran expert, and to talk a little bit about the Iran negotiations that we are having right now, that still haven't been finalized in Vienna. So, Dr. Golpour, this has been going on now for 20 years. The West has negotiated with Iran to try to stop their nuclear program. There were talks over sanctions 7 years ago. There was the JCPOA signed, and now then the Americans left, and now the negotiators are sitting in Vienna to discuss what can be done. Maybe talk us through a little bit. What are the big issues that have been discussed in Vienna, and where do we stand right now with this potential agreement?
Hello again. Good afternoon to you, all the participants. So, for make a very short, such a long and complicated history, we can say in the first step with the European as Solana, Jacques Straw, and then after Mogherini, the diplomacy, multilateral diplomacy was successful. We could really understand the counterparty of the people like Zarif and also Rouhani. And finally, the agreement was done 2015. But the strategic orientation of this agreement was in the hand of the Supreme Guide. And so with this deviation, we can say that Trump couldn't really deal nicely. He withdrew from the deal, but we know we had the internal mechanism in GCPOA, he could manage and negotiate, but unfortunately, it was a kind of trouble time for a few years. And again, we come back on the table. But this time, Republic Islamic didn't accept a direct talk with US. And this is why, in one hand, we have Enrico Mora, who lost his position as moderator. And we have Mr. Ulyanov, the ambassador of Russia, who take in his advantage the full, we can say, agenda, calendar item of the negotiation in hands. So now before Ukrainian crisis, we can say the negotiation was quite well. We could see very clearly and with a comprehensive approach what is really the differences and how we must go towards some agreement. But now we can say that again, we have a lot of trouble with Russia because they ask a lot of guarantees. And now I don't want to make it long, but so we go on the area of the red lines, we go on the area of the differences of the motivation of the strategy. We know from China and Russia, they have some, we can call it a hidden deal between themselves. And so Troika and the US also, now we lost all the connection because of Ukraine. I can say—
yes.
Sorry
to interrupt you.
Yes,
so
sorry.
You're saying the Russians basically led the negotiations at the end, and they are the ones who have now a deal on the table, which needs to be signed or approved still by all the others. But is it the case that this deal is going to be signed, or will it be held up, or will it be discarded as a no deal? And if that's the case, if the last one is the case, what's next? There is no deal. What will be next?
Yes, you know, it will be the Russian game. But we will have a shake and mat Russian version, and the date, the movement, and we can say the calculation of balance of power will be really in the hand of Putin and also Lavrov. So it is a very pity situation because the text, it was ready. The negotiation was on the way since now 11 months, and we negotiated the same text 2 times. The first time with Araghchi and Zarif before last July, and now with Bagheri and his team. So I think the problem is not so much the text, the problem is the balance of power. And we understand now how much it was important for Europe to really assume the leadership on this negotiation and don't allow, for example, Lavrov and Ulyanov to make the meeting as they like, because they had all the facilities to organize and impose the item of the meeting this last 5 months in Vienna.
If you say if the Europeans should have been stronger in this negotiation, what exactly should they have done? What should Enrique Mora, the EU negotiator, have done to put pressure on the other?
Yes,
parties?
You know, we have at least 4 or 5 phases for each negotiation. The first is to make clear in which point we will negotiate. It must be a very comprehensive approach, and this it was the job of Enrico Mora. He must really fix the agenda, and from the first day, agenda was in the hand of Bagheri and Ulyanov. They decided we go only speak about the lifting of the sanctions. But we had 3, we can say, task force who must simultaneously work on 3 different items, but they privileged the first item, who was the lifting of the sanctions. And Enrico Mora was absolutely surrender on this, we can say, the deviation. And the second item, it was to put some calendar for the decision makers. Enrico Mora was very, we can say, exhaustive. He was very open for all the different area of negotiation. And this is why we lost a lot of time. For the same point of the negotiation, we put several, we can say, weeks. If you go, we are on the 9th round of discussion for the same item. And this needs some leadership from Europe. And he had, by definition, this authority and power to impose the calendar, the item, and the last, we can say, decision for each counterparty. So this is why little by little we see it was the tweet of the Ulyanov and his direction imposed, and we are there we are today. We don't know. Normally we must have the last signature last weekend, but again, with the need of guarantee of Russia, it was postponed, and now Vienna is dark. Enrique Mora announced we will not have the expert meeting. For him, the work is done. Is no question.
You're saying the paper is on the table, the draft agreement is on the table. What's holding the Russians and the others from signing it? What's keeping them from signing it right now? Because if you say that Russia has been the one that has led the negotiations and that has put a stamp on this agreement, why are they not signing it?
So we can say we have three categories of bargaining. First is in the Middle East. You know, Russia have a very luxury position with all the producer of the petrol. And I think they expect to have a new program providing energy in Europe. It is one part, but also Latin America, and also discussion going now between Venezuela and US. I think they want also in somehow interfere on this. So the first, we can say the strategy is to remodelization of the distribution of the petrol coming from Middle East. The second is to really see how much they can create disorder in front of the international order. And so Republic Islamic is a very nice partner for make a disorder in Syria, in Yemen, in Lebanon, and in Iraq. And I think it's a lot of cooperation, discussion between the Guardian of Revolution and the Russian army, including we can say the proxy war in now in Ukraine, because they use a lot of mercenary from this part of the Middle East. So this also, I think, is a very major question of reflection of how they will dispatch all these different we can say the militia from Middle East to Europe. And the third part is really the direct talk with US, because giving this JCPOA to Biden, who is agreed to give a very high price, will be, we can say, a kind of regression in the high position of Russia in the Middle East, especially in the eyes of the Arabic countries.
You mentioned the price that potentially has to be paid, which is the lifting of all sanctions that are currently in place. I think there are more than 1,400
yes,
mainly American sanctions that are in place. What would the lifting of those sanctions, if it's agreed in this agreement, do? And what would it do, not just to America, but what would it do to Europe as well? Because Europe geographically is much closer to the Middle East and may feel the impact much more than, let's say, America.
So according to the information we have from the second JCPOA and the text, we can say really it is a very chaotic arrangement between the lifting of the sanction on the different category of the institutions, judicial and legal and physical person, entity. And as you know, we have at least 4 principal category of the sanctions, means in terms of human rights and terrorism, in terms of the act, terrorist act, and the third is about the financial participation in terror, who is a very important area, who actually can allow us to come back a little bit on the paradise of Emirat and Dubai and see it's a lot of different company from Republic Islamic who they are under sanction of US, but they are have a very major role in, for example, in Emirat, in Dubai. And the fourth is all the, we can say, the harmonization of the sanction between Europe and US. So with the lifting, and for this we had, actually we had 3 phases of negotiation. First, in time of Obama and now with Biden, the idea was we first negotiate the nuclear. Second, we go on whatever proxy war. And third, we go whatever human rights and see one by one different institution and different player how we can lift or not the sanction. But now is a big confusion because the maximalist demand of Republic Islamic to leave all the sanctions, who was amplified by China's support, because the Chinese, for their economical diplomacy, they need a Middle East absolutely, we can call it without any sanction. They want any trouble. They want to have a free land for their diplomacy. And this is why they really put a lot of pressure on US on this last 6-7 months. Finally, we are here. It is a big confusion about the area of the sanctions, who was delivery very nicely positioned. Each of them, they have their own mechanism, their own justification, their own, we can say, the classification by law. But now we will see if the second text will come out, we will see and interpret and understand how Mr. Mali arranged, or we can say put some mishmash in all this area, but it will be very chaotic for the neighborhood of Iran, but also for Europe.
Okay, and assuming that there is no deal, no agreement, what would be the alternative scenario on this?
For Europe, we have not yet. Is a lot of discussion in Parliament and in Commission. We have the task force that are working in prospective. We can say the time is for coming years. We envisage to take, we can say, the new area of crisis in Iran. We are more now interested about the whatever human rights, the civil society activities, and perhaps some collaboration with some European office in Tehran. Is a lot of discussion. And of course, the violation of human rights is very strongly condemned. But in terms of economical and financial exchange and the partnership with Republic Islamic, if we have not the deal, will be absolutely a disaster, because JCPOA for Europe is the central, we can say, the path and central way to allow European and also Iranian to open, we can say, their enterprise, their economy, and to have a legitimate business. So we can say that in Gulf, according to my information analysis, the same. We have not so much the alternative proposal, except for Israel, who they prepare and they announce some plan B, who is more perhaps taking the military actions and is more, we can say, a kind of total war in terms of information and security.
Okay. Now, what should the EU do if you were to advise the EU to get a grip on this negotiation again? You said they lost the grip to the Russians. What can they do, and to what extent can the EU trust the Iranians, given that there has been a change of government? So you just mentioned that they negotiated the package a year ago, and then they renegotiated the same thing once again with the new government. Is it an everlasting negotiation? Is it ongoing forever because people keep changing, governments keep changing in America and other places? Or will there be a deal that can be struck between all the players that can really lead the way forward and that can really lead to more stability in the entire region?
According to my understanding and the reports I submit to European Parliament is last October, I really feel Europe needs a multi-head strategy, because the crisis and the different level of crisis cannot tolerate any one-way solution for Europe. We need a multi-head strategy, means for each of these challenges in terms of security, in terms of nuclear, in terms of economic, in terms of immigration, in terms of cultural exchange, Europe must provide a new, we can say, alternative who can have the coordination of European Council, European Commission, and European Parliament. I'm not going to develop all this area now, but very shortly speaking, we can say that whatever cultural and whatever human rights activity and whatever contact with the civil society is up to European Parliament to make the bridge, and we have the bridge. Their meeting to Iran was postponed this last few months, but still we have the hope to reconnect the parliamentary from Europe and Iranian side. In terms of security, I think Charles Michel have a lot of information, and he had a lot of exchange with Iranian partners, especially for national security, Mr. Shamkhani. And I really believe he's proposing a very adapted and a smart strategy who have a kind of balance between the hard power and smart power. Means he use in the same time diplomacy, but also is question of, we can say, pressure. So I really feel today the Europeans have a lot of social base in Iran, and the civil society expect and wait for some initiative coming from Europe. And on this way, I think the partnership can be done with the neighborhood of Iran, because it's some idea about the free trade zone, who can have the immediate and the direct operation of European International Bank for whatever investment we need on the area. And also is some we can say the initiative, we can call it as a economical purge against whatever laundering money for terrorism, and also whatever is not healthy economy on the region. I think they are the major area who Europe can have the leadership, and also knowing the interference of China and Russia become more and more powerful on this area, it's up to Europe to decide the calendar and the manner how all this project must start.
Last question on this subject, and then I move on to Nat. Would you say that you can and should, you seem to suggest it, trade and business with Iran, but with companies that are not linked to the regime or to problematic aspects within the regime? But is that possible in a situation like in Iran, where for more than 40 years now it's been under the control of a very conservative clerical regime? Is it possible to have trade relations with that country and at the same time not benefiting that particular regime and the problematic elements within that regime?
On economical level, yes. It is a very big yes for you, because according to my understanding, the big change come from economical area. The situation of economical crisis and the absolute enormous resource we have on this area allow us to see if we restructure we can say the economical model, not only for Iran, but also for the whole area. This can bring a new vibe and new, we can say, perspective for especially all the young generation from Syria, Iraq to Yemen, and of course, Saudi Arabia and Iran. So on this way, if we have this multi-strategy perspective, means if we propose first some restructuration of the economy on this area, I think we will not have a big opposition, even coming from Iranian government. But for this, we need a nice positioning. We cannot work on the big cities. We need a kind of free trade zone who accept whatever change can come from the Basel III, means first about bringing a very powerful management of finance and bank on this area, and second, to really make understand all of these countries, they have the same interest, means to have economical growth and sharing this healthy economic benefit for everybody on the area. So on this, I think Europe have a real, we can call it reputation. If we want to compare with Chinese companies and Russian companies, the European very easily can convince all Middle East. And the only thing will be, now we must see the extension of the signatory or not of GCPOA. But if we go on some escalation of tension on this area, I think the best answer, an immediate answer, will be an economical plan for recovery and bringing a kind of model or solution for the escalation of the tension. Otherwise, polarization of between the radical and the existence of proxy war will not allow any discussion, perhaps next year when perhaps we will come again together.
Thank you very much, Majid. Now I'll bring this straight to Nathanaël.
So open for any question, because we went very quick and so many
different
areas.
We'll take the questions right after. Please stay online.
Okay.
I want maybe ask that question to Nathanaël. Is the EU capable of delivering such a thing like a free trade zone, what Majid just outlined in the area, and to knock heads together so the Middle East can become a different area, or is it not able because it's not projecting power like other countries do? It doesn't have its own army. It's more a soft power, as we heard this morning, also an economic power, but maybe not a political one. What would you say can the EU do to improve things in the Middle East, and what should it do?
That's an excellent question. Let's start by thanking you for inviting me to this panel. I'm very honored to be alongside Majid and Raphael. Well, that's definitely the question of the military might of the European Union, and that's a kind of two-branch question. The first question is the consensus, because before applying any military power to a region like the Middle East, there has to be consensus among the 27 member states of the EU. And we see that on a number of Middle Eastern questions, there is no consensus. There were some consensus, obviously, on Syria, but look at the Libya case, for instance. It's Europe against Europe. Look at the Eastern Mediterranean area. So that's the first question of what does Europe want to achieve before asking the question of how it's possible to achieve it. Then there's the military question. There is this myth that no one can do anything in the Middle East if they don't have boots on the ground. That's definitely true of a number of crises. I mean, definitely Syria up until 2 years ago, for instance, it was 100% true. I mean, if you couldn't counterbalance the Syrian regime, Daesh, and Iran and Russia on the ground, you literally have no political power on the ground, no diplomatic power, not even economic power. In Iraq for a long time, it was also the case, and it's still relatively the case right now, as this is a theater of a confrontation between Iran and the US. But think about Lebanon, think about the Mediterranean, think about, to an extent, Yemen, think about Syria today, in the kind of like post-war reconstruction period, at least in parts of the country. The European Union has the capacity to have an impact through their, as you said, soft power, but also sheer economic power, diplomatic power. It's just a matter of realizing it and being focused enough to apply it. And that's very much something that this is probably something we're going to be discussing, that the EU is realizing right now during the Russian crisis. They are powerful. When you apply sanctions, it has an effect, maybe not the intended effect, but it does have a very strong power of nuisance. There are major economic power, and when they act together in a coordinated way, it hurts, or it has an effect. And you can see that on Russia already.
Can you envisage that the EU in the next months and years will use similar sanctions to deal with other problems, for example, in the Middle East, for example, with Iran? Or do you not see them reacting in such a way? Was the war in Ukraine, the visual, the pictures from the war, were they necessary to trigger that action by the EU? Or do you think it could be applied preemptively to certain conflict areas, for example, in the Middle East?
No, that's a fantastic question. Clearly, there is a realization of EU's own power. That's for sure. Whether there's going to be a before and an after to that is way too early to say. First, because there's something very specific about the Ukraine crisis. It's happening in Europe, on the European continent. So there's a direct threat to Europeans' values and European stability, European security, and European peace. So it clearly offers a very strong incentive that might not be replicable in other theater of operations. Having said that, there's definitely something that the European Commission and European leaders are realizing right now in terms of their capacity to act in a conjoint way with producing concrete effects on the ground. Whether they will want to exert this power in the future is still very unclear. For instance, we're not even sure it's going to last in Ukraine. We're not even sure it's going to last against Russia. There's this kind of shock and awe moment right now in the EU. But what if this continues for 6 months? Will the Germans start to fragilize this unity because they need their energy from Russia? Will the Italians start making diplomatic issues as well? This united front is very circumstances dependent to an extent.
Talking of the united front, on Iran, in the Iran negotiation over the last 3-4 years, certainly when Trump was the president in America, there was no united front of the West or between Europe and America. There was a big split. Now, would you say this has led to the kind of agreement Majid talked about it earlier, where the Russians put their stamp on it and where they took over, in a way, the negotiation in Vienna? And follow up on that, should America and Europe work hand in hand, or can you foresee that they have different interests and pursue them also in international negotiations, for example, with Iran? Is it legitimate for Europe to have a different approach to Iran than the United States?
I think it's legitimate, and I think it's very healthy to an extent. Obviously, when it comes to the balance of power between Russia and the West, there is a definite front to be showed in this particular context. But more broadly, if you're asking if there should be kind of a dogma of the EU aligning systematically with the US, I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's desirable, and I don't think it's effective. Iran is, and I'm speaking under the control of Dr. Golpour, of course, is a very hard policy player to read. There are so-called hardliners and so-called progressists or reformists or moderates. It really depends who you read. And there are economic interests, there are ideological interests, there are religious interests, and there are national interests. And all of this is very hard to read at any given time. So an international negotiation framework where you have the US and the EU that adopt significantly different strategies toward Iran, help the West deal with these several aspects of Iranian foreign policy and speak to potentially different actors within the Iranian civil society and within Iranian's government. So it's rather healthy for Europe to have a different line, and also having this kind of go-between position between the US and Iran can be very useful at times. Obviously, this was a role that Oman had broken in the past, and Switzerland as well. But the EU more broadly can do that, especially because of the extent of their economic, past economic interactions with Iran. So yeah, to answer your question, more clearly, no, there shouldn't be a dogma of a pure alignment with the US, but in a framework of confrontation with Russia on this question, I think, yeah, clearly that there should be more of a united front.
Last question, or two more questions to you. One would be, what role do you see for the Gulf countries in this complicated negotiation with Iran? So far, they have not figured much, at least not in the public debate in Europe as players in this, but they are immediately affected by geographic position and also by economic interest there.
Very clearly, you're talking about the Ukraine crisis, not
no,
Iran,
I'm
right?
talking about Iran, the Iranian negotiation.
Oh,
how do you see the role of the Gulf countries there, of the Emirates and Bahrain, for example?
Well, it's very clear that they would want to have a role. They made repeated calls to the Biden administration, both Saudi Arabia and the UAE, to be included in that deal. And in fact, the only Gulf country that was kind of included in that deal, not necessarily the deal itself, but like on the fringe, was Qatar. So that clearly was a problem for Abu Dhabi and Riyadh. So there's definitely an element of frustration not to have been included. So they have their own agenda, and as it stands, I don't see them so much having an impact on this question, albeit they would want to. The question of whether Biden was right not to involve them is a great question. On the one hand, a deal that's struck with the UAE and Saudi Arabia, and potentially even Israel, is a more robust deal. But on the other hand, it would have taken way more time than previously explained by Dr. Golpour to strike a deal, or even to come to a draft. And we know that the Iranians are using time as a negotiation tool to put pressure on the negotiators. They keep enriching uranium, they keep making progress with their nuclear program as we speak, and as the negotiations went on with on and off and various, elements of pressures, depending on the events, but it's still going on. So probably Joe Biden had this in mind, saying, okay, if we include Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Israel, it's going to take forever and might not even happen. If we exclude them, it's probably less of a robust deal, but we'll apply our pressure in other ways for it to be for them to be compliant with it. That's likely what he had in mind.
Final question to you, and then maybe we can have a conversation also with Majid. And if there are questions in the audience, please write them in the chat so we can see them. Final question to you. 2 years ago, you created your digital media, That's Why. The question of information, correct information of facts and not propaganda, is also very relevant in many discussions nowadays in Ukraine, with the war ongoing, but certainly in the Middle East, where we have very different narratives floating and coexisting next to one another. What importance do you think has correct and information, and what can be done to improve information of people and players, especially in the Middle East, in order to ensure correct decision making? And maybe talk a little bit about what your platform does and what the idea behind this.
Sure, it does exactly. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It does exactly that. That's why it's a platform we started building 2 years ago, and that we launched in August 2021 during the Afghan crisis. That has two big aspects. The first one is to empower the audience to take actions on the issue they watch about. So it's not just about what's happening in Afghanistan, but what can you do to help in Afghanistan? It's not just about talking about climate change, but how can you be an actor of change in that? And right now, how can you have an effect on Ukraine? Obviously, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, obviously, objectivity and neutrality is a goal. It can never be fully achieved, but more modestly, more humbly at the moment, what is crucial in the Middle East, and we're not a Middle East focus, we're a generalist a platform, but we also talk about the Middle East, is not so much objectivity because it can't be reached, but staying away from sheer propaganda divisiveness. And there are a number of state-sponsored and state-owned media, especially digital media for millennials and Gen Z in the Middle East. I'm sure you know who I'm referring to, including Russians, whose only purpose is to pour gasoline on fire to further their own agenda in Yemen, in the Gulf, in Israel and Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon. And it's very, very dangerous. And we have to have independent media like ours that have another lens, a lens that builds bridges, a lens that puts the emphasis also on the people on the ground and not just our governments, and that doesn't have any hidden propaganda, hidden or not hidden, sometimes it's very not well hidden, propaganda agenda. And that in turn can create the public opinion framework or rather terrain for better policy decisions. Because at the end of the day, this does have an impact on EU foreign policy, on American foreign policy, and to an extent, public opinion does also have an impact in Arab states. I'm thinking of Egypt, Jordan, and Israel clearly, Lebanon less so. But it's part of the conversation, and there should be more media like ours that are trying to have this impact. I'm not sure we can.
No, now can you hear me again? So let me bring back in Majid. Maybe I don't see any questions. Maybe there are some. If there are, please let me know. But let me bring in Majid again. Do we have enough information on what's going on inside Iran, what the Iranian regime, what they are thinking? And is Europe, as one of the big negotiating partners, is Europe well informed? Do they know what they are doing there in these negotiations? Or are they being led astray by people who one might call propagandists? Majid.
Okay, perhaps I can give two useful information after answering your question. Yes, Europe is informed very deeply, correctly about the situation in Iran. We have the different foreign ministers of different European countries, including Belgium, who we are living now in France, and they are in permanent, we can say, navette between Tehran and their capital. They have really the very high-level analysis and understanding. As you know, that in domestic level, we have at least 5 different categories of crises. Means societal, economical, and also the crisis of the succession of the current leader who must prepare the place for his successor, and also is a big, we can say, the big dilemma for the regime, because now more and more you have the Guardian of Revolution. They took a position on the core of the central power of Velayat Faqih, but at the same time, we have a ideological, theological regime who have a very strong narrative for the social cohesion, and as our friend said, this narrative is very, very, we can say, crucial for the expansion of the hegemony of regime on Middle East. So, but the point is, in Europe, we have a lot of information. We have also a lot of lobby of Republic Islamic in Europe who is working for a kind of approachment between Europe and this counterbalancing power of regime, who, for me, they are not representing the Shia. They are representing a very specific ideology, who we can call it ultra radical Orthodox, let's give the name, Khomeinis. They are a very, we can say, narrow and a specific interpretation of Shia, but they are not Shia. they are just a new postmodern, we can say, interpretation of the Shia. And if we do the analysis of their, we can say, lecturing every Friday prayer around the country, we understand there's nothing of Shia inside. So the point for Europe is we have a lot of analysis, understanding, but the coordination between this understanding don't exist. We are each, we can say, section of Europe, council or commission or parliament, they do their job, but they are not coordinating. This is why I really feel for GCPOA, we will have deal or not deal, we will need a kind of Mr. Barnier for Europe, who will take in charge this dossier, nuclear dossier, who can have in very close relationship with the agents. She or he can really take in charge of all the different aspects of this very complicated dossier, who don't forget, because during the time we are exchanging about Iran, they are enriching the uranium, and the breakout time for having bomb become more and more now. Really, we are speaking about the months.
Maybe I can interrupt on that one. You say yes. The breakout moment can be very, very close. We don't know exactly when, but could be a matter of months.
Yes.
In the event we get a deal, an agreement in Vienna, do you think that will help to put that moment further away, or is it the case that the bomb, the nuclear bomb, will be developed by Iran no matter what? It will be developed maybe secretly or openly, but it will be developed nonetheless. We cannot really stop it by signing agreements like the one on the table.
You know, reading the analyze the document of, for example, intelligence service of US or even here in Germany, and we can say, unfortunately, most of them, they accept closely we are facing a nuclear power in Middle East, and they call very with a big shy, but we can say it, yes, when you have 15 times more than expecting a platform of GCPOA, enrich uranium in your country, when you have all these, we can say how to know, and when you are qualified now as with your centrifuges IR6, so you are a problem for the security and for the nuclear safety in your country. So on this case, the thing is, even, for example, Mr. Grossi and Evan Blinken, they think if they can sign the agreement, they can have the possibility to postpone this breakout. And this is, you know, we have nothing to discuss, because they have the power and they feel ready. They have this capacity. Once they have the agreement, like before with Obama, he really thought if we have the first GCPOA, we can go negotiate the ballistic missile, we can go negotiate the regional expansion of Republic Islamic. So this is we are on the area of policy. And this is why I want now come back to my two useful information for you. When we are speaking about the economical diplomacy, who really this area of all the area, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Iran, all these countries they need, we are not talking about politics, and we are not talking about the government. We are talking about the private sector, we are talking about the entrepreneur, and we are talking about all these projects we have in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Dubai. And when we are talking about the free trade zone, and their watch of the very high level international institutions, we are talking about the negotiation with all these, we can say, very difficult countries. First, Lebanon, because they need this program very urgently, but also Iraq. President Macron was there and he negotiated this kind of, we can say, free trade zone, who can bring a new oxygen for the economic of the country. So,
sorry to interrupt you. We need to finish very soon because we've got 1 minute left. I would like to give the floor. Thank you very much, Majid, to Nat. Just to have a final assessment. Do you think, Nat, an agreement will help? An agreement with Iran will help, or will it do more damage? Just a very short answer.
Well, that's a tough question.
Yes or no answer, if you can give it.
Yeah, we'll solve the Middle East crisis in 1 minute. It depends what deal. What we hear right now from the draft, it's too close to the previous deal that was in place and doesn't enough take into account the progress that were made scientifically, technologically by Iran on the ground. So a better deal might have a chance. But as Dr. Golpour said, it's not a guarantee of anything. And otherwise, the only route is Israeli intervention and nuclear proliferation, and that we do not want that. So if there is a chance for a strong deal, let's try it.
Thank you both very much for joining us. It was very interesting and very stimulating, and wish everybody a good conference. Thanks a lot.
Thank you,
to your
Michael.
participant.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.